5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. The only thing we have to fear is fear.
Mile 18.
This is Endurance Nation. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Endurance Nation podcast. I'm Coach Patrick, your host on these different episodes that cover interviews with our members and with industry leaders, as well as regular topics that are pertinent to endurance athlete success. This time around, it's getting close to the fall, and I wanted to let you know that our season is kicking off on November 1st. That's right. Endurance Nation works through seasons, and our winter training program kicks off in earnest on November 1st. If you head over to endurancenation.us, you'll be able to enter your email address to get all the details about what's coming up and learn why starting in November is super important and how we can work with you over the course of the winter using our patented out-season program and the subsequent training phases of the year to create the conditions and knowledge you need to be your better and faster self. And if you're ready to get started early, can't wait till November 1st, we have a durability program for you too. So once again, head over to endurancenation.us, enter that email, learn more about what we are doing here over the course of the year, why Endurance Nation is different, why training with a team is the way to go, and how we can help make you successful. Until then, I look forward to hearing from you online somewhere, and sit back here now and enjoy this episode.
Endurance Nation.
Yes. Oh, all right. You have a parachute. Have you ever jumped out of a plane?
I have not. I have a thing for heights. I would not be super excited about that experience. I would avoid that. I would avoid those experiences. Yeah.
Well, sometimes, apparently a lot of times in the movies, people can't. They just have to jump out of a plane.
Yeah, it's just part of the only way they can get to the mission is they have to jump out of the plane.
Apparently, yeah, right. But between the two of us, if either one of us had to jump out of a plane to save this thing, I would nominate you, despite your fear of heights. I'm not sure I'd be able to figure out all the buttonology on the way down on that thing. As we all know, my Garmin altimeter is always broken here on the East Coast. So I don't think it would give me accurate readings until I was about to impact the Earth. So I'm just saying. Plus, you have the helmet, which, depending on how this episode goes, we may need to show people a picture of the helmet. You may have to show them a picture of you in the helmet. We may have to show that helmet. Anyway. All right. Okay. Here we go, everybody. So I'd like to welcome you all to a special edition of the Endurance Nation podcast. This is a new tag team version. I'm joined today by Matt Limbert, who's been a powerhouse here behind Endurance Nation for going on 2+ years. An incredible athlete, an even better co-conspirator who does all of the things technical and smart behind the scenes. As I said to him before the podcast started, I'm just here for my good looks. And the really, really bad jokes. He makes things run. So I'm super excited to have him on board. More about the podcast in a second. But Matt, welcome to the pod.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, Patrick. Yeah, thanks for including me. It's been a long time part of the community, and it's good to talk to some folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're also super smart. So no pressure. I hope you brought your smart shirt today because we're going to need it. Our audience is discerning. They only listen to my dumb jokes for about a minute before they click off according to the data. So we've got to start hitting them with good stuff right away. So the style of this podcast is to take some of the fun conversations that Matt and I have behind the scenes when we're creating training plans or brainstorming content or trying to figure out how to best serve the community and deliver it at a more macro scale. If done right, we may even come up with some better ideas along the way. And we'd love to hear from all of you out there as well. This will be posted to all of our regular channels. So you can always comment on Facebook or, leave a comment. We'd always, of course, love it if you subscribed or just recommended our podcast. But the format, we're going to keep it pretty simple at first. Each of us is prepared. Top secret. I have no idea what Matt has prepared, but we have 3 different topics to talk about, which we want to dive into. And we'll serve them up and go from there. But before we dive in, Matt, all right, let's just talk about, because you're an endurance athlete, I'm an endurance athlete. What is your endurance sport of choice right now? And what are you scheming to do this year?
Oh, endurance sport of choice. That's a great one. So I guess mountain biking is my endurance sport of choice. And I'm getting into stage racing with mountain biking. So multi-day races that either move point to point or are based out of one location. And you do like different loops. The days are typically about like 2.5 to 4 hours, lots of climbing, lots of single track. But I guess what makes that a little bit more interesting is that I started training. I train primarily like a triathlete, though. I still like to swim and run, and I do most of my biking on mountain biking and stuff like that. So I enjoyed swimming and running enough that I wanted to keep it in my training plan. So that's my sport of choice so far. What about you? What's yours?
Oh my goodness. I'm still pretending to be a triathlete. I'm in the 4th year of deferring my most recent Kona qualification to next year. So still going strong. I think I hold the longest deferral streak of any triathlete alive going to Kona. It's possible. Could be my only claim to fame. In the meantime, after many years of hemming and hawing, I did buy a gravel bike last year and have fallen in love with exploring the roads. For those of you who follow me on social media, you know I often take my TT bike onto dirt roads and inadvertently find those adventures. So I've decided to take the fact that I always end up on a dirt road, turn it into a positive. So now that I have a bike for it, I've been getting out, exploring, and enjoying. This year, thanks to your help and some of the community as well, I will be competing, I think more completing the Leadville race. I don't even know what the official name is. What is it? It's not. What is it? Leadville 100?
Yeah, Leadville 100 mountain bike. Yeah, you got to discern that from the Leadville 100 trail run. So you may take that one on in the future, but right now it's just mountain bike.
There is very limited risk of that happening. All of you 100-mile run people out there who are clearly right now shaking in your trail running sneakers, don't worry about it. I'll be doing that, and then Steamboat as well. Disappointed that they separated the two events, although possibly overjoyed once I complete Leadville and discover how completely hard it is. Side note, did I tell you that I met someone here who lives in Leadville? Did I tell you that?
No, met somebody in Barrington that lives in
Barrington, Rhode Island. Population 4, right? So we're going to a meeting, and there's a woman in town who's just super outgoing. She's a sailor, just an amazing personality, like just bright. You just like people. She's just a sun beaming on everybody. Happened to be in the building to watch her daughter in a basketball game, and was with a gentleman. And she introduced him, and he's like in town visiting family, whatever. So she introduced me. I was like, great. She's like, oh, Patrick's the crazy, athlete person. Which is always great to be introduced that way, because at parties I struggle to come up with what I actually do. So when people just call me crazy and athlete and person, they've taken care of everything. Like what else is there like that's really left? And she said, "What are you doing this year? What are you racing this year?" And normally I don't say anything. I'm just like stuff, because I don't want to get into it because people don't understand the stuff. But she's kind of wacky, so I was like, "Oh, I'm doing this crazy race. It's called Leadville." Instantly, Dudeguy lights up. He's like, Leadville? I live in Leadville. I grew up here in Barrington, but my parents moved to Leadville. I have property out there. I live out there. I just come back here. I was like, are you joking me? Like I just, the universe obviously conspired to bring us together because I just signed up for this race. I said, I am a little concerned because as I've discovered, once I get around 8,000 feet of altitude, I kind of struggle. I'm not a small person. And he said, you may be in trouble because the entire race is above 9,000 feet. And I was like, all right, listen, I don't like you already. But we do have to meet up. So he and I are meeting for some sort of beverage this weekend. So I look forward to meeting him. And just a cool serendipitous connection to Leadville. Dudeguy.
Dudeguy. Yeah, I'll be interested to hear his backstory, because that whole town was a mining town for a long time. And now is like the home to all kinds of endurance athletes and stuff like that. So it's a cool, quirky town like that. Great backstory.
He seemed very cool. Maybe not, I wouldn't call him quirky, but he was clearly had been living at 9,000 feet and was, when you're living at 9,000 feet, I think you just have to be healthy. I think you can be unhealthy living at 9,000 feet. I mean, maybe I'll learn something new this August, but as of right now, it just seems so hard to be up there that I'm just assuming that. All right. Anyway, small world. That was super, super crazy. All right. So now we're done. We've talked about all the stuff we're going to do this year and the ridiculousness. Let's dive into the talking points for today. Who goes first? Do you want to go first or I go first? How do we do this?
I'll go first. How about that? And you can tell me what you think or whatever. So,
right.
so my first idea was when you're talking about was you introduced me as the data guy, and I'm going to talk about the thing that's probably my data weakness here is the data versus the story. So, my data is awesome. My story stinks. Like my Garmin does everything it's supposed to do, and it kills it every workout. My Garmin is spot on. Like it uploads to all the places that I need it to upload. It'll automatically upload to Training Peaks and Strava and Final Surge and you name it, and name stuff for me. Like it'll name the workout for me. But I have all this data, and then but I never go back and write any comments. So then when I want to go back and look at my workouts, all I have is a bunch of power files with heart rate, and that doesn't really it doesn't have like context, like what I was thinking or how I was feeling or how that workout fit into the week. So I'm trying to make a concerted effort now to write to improve my story. So my data is awesome. I want to have an awesome story. So so some folks do it in Strava, but I guess I'm trying to do it in Training Peaks now, is to write more about what I was trying to accomplish with that workout, how I felt, and what I was trying to get out of it, and then what I kind of learned. I'm trying to keep it simple. And I think you had a good talking point the other day, was that like you had a thing that said, processes or rules over processes. So I want to have a rule. So my rule is going to be that my workout is not over until I get done thumb typing in whatever it is that I'm going to write about my workout. So
I love it.
I got to thumb type. When I get done doing my workout, I'm all sweaty. I'm going to thumb type in whatever that is. And I think just by doing it over, a number of days, that'll give me a better idea of what it is I need to say. Cause then I'll know when anyway, that's my idea. What do you think of that?
I love that idea. Well, a couple of things. First of all, I'm glad you're thumb typing it, because my experience with telling Siri what I want to say always ends up being pretty offensive and confusing. So I could see future Matt coming back to read about this crazy ride he did in April, and it says something like, "Put on my pants. I love rubber bands," and salty chips, for life, Britney Spears. That'd be no good. So, although maybe that could be going for something. It may make sense to you, future Matt. Perhaps one day without a helmet, you sustain some trauma with the skull, and it all makes sense to you at that time. I don't know. So, but I think stories aren't just about the future, though. So you talked about future Matt coming back to talk about stories. I think stories are important now, because you're right. When you finish a workout, there's like a start and an end. And everything that comes out of it is ones and zeros, and it turns into charts, and it turns into signals to other people. Like Matt did a thing, and it goes out there for you. It's your marker, right? That I'm making progress. But stories connect things together, and stories capture sort of all the other parts of what being an athlete is. So there's like a story example could be simply about the workout. So for example, most people's storytelling, in my experience, is before the workout, right? So it's either before the workout, like, this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to get on my bike, and I'm going to ride, and I'm going to go to that hill, my favorite hill, and I'm going to do this thing up and down on it. And maybe I'll see the deer that's usually over there. Hopefully not the wildcat. I'm assuming Matt lives in wild places. We don't have any of those creatures here in Rhode Island. Just quahogs. And then there's stories that we tell afterwards. Like if it was a good workout, we'll tell our friends, like, "Oh, like, what's up, dude? Like, yeah, strange. I bumped into you after I texted you and said I wanted to meet because I want to talk to you about my workout." And then you drop some like workout, gem on them, and they're like, "Oh, that was amazing." And you're like, "You're my friend because you always say that." And that's great. So we have two ends of stories. The problem with the story and the front end is that very rarely does the story we tell ourselves about a workout really turn out to be the workout. The workout's always different, right? So we have a story at the beginning that sets expectations, just sort of like, today I'm going to go to work and I'm going to crush it. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to be productive and smart. And when somebody surprises me with a new task, I'm just going to take it and say, thank you. And then do it. They'll be amazed by my efficiency. And that, that story lasts for about I don't know, 7 minutes at the office before your day gets nuked, right? And then after the first week on the job, you're like, I'm not going to tell myself that story anymore. Your story changes. So I like your version of story because you're translating, you're taking your experience that you just had and you're downloading what happened to you into a storyboard form. And to me, that just adds not just the context to the ones and zeros you're talking about, but it also, I think, leads to the next chapter, So for me, it's sort of like the cliffhanger, right? So at the end of the chapter, like Ricky found John and he was talking to Jane and then the lights went out. And you're like, that was the end of the chapter? Like, I was going to stop reading. It's time to go to bed. I got to read the next chapter because what happened? Did somebody turn the lights out? Did the lights go out by mistake? Is there a power outage? Like, what's going to happen? And so when you have your workout story, then you're moving over to like, oh, this workout was great. I did this and, this happened to me. Like I was kind of tired, but I fought through it. And it's like, ... Well, what happens tomorrow? Like, did it keep going good? Did it go south? Did it go sideways? Like, what is that story? And I think I talk often about painting a story when I race, like thinking about I'm building a graph that I want to show people when I race. I think the story enhances that muscle that really sort of, as you practice that in your daily training, it gives additional meaning to what you're doing. But it also helps you start to connect those ones and zeros in a way that I think could actually be more effective for you as an athlete. So was that a short enough answer?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I like your idea of like, I think you captured it well, where you have an idea of like what you think the workout's going to be going into it, of what your expectation was, or what your purpose was, or what you think you're going to go out and do, and then how it ends up, and then being honest about how it ended up. Well, it didn't, or maybe it did end up. Maybe I did go out and do the hill and everything worked out great, or maybe I didn't. And then after a while, you'll be able to see trends in those things, or learn from those mistakes that you make like over and over again. Like, I'm writing the same thing again. Maybe I should do something different about that. Or I'm hoping that like the whole training aspect will become a little bit more richer for me. I mean, there's a lot to learn in the numbers, but I think there's a lot to learn from, the narrative and those numbers in perspective.
Oh, well, just to piggyback on that, like me meeting Dudeguy, right? So you could have had a 2.5 hour workout planned and then you do half an hour, right? And on Training Peaks, it makes it red. And like you put a sad face there. And it looks bad because you wanted to do 2.5 hours. You didn't get to do 2.5 hours. What that doesn't tell you is that you did get a flat tire, 10 miles into the ride, and you were stuck on the side of the road and you went through 2 CO2 cartridges. And then you were toast. So you called your wife, but she didn't answer. But some dude guy in a pickup truck was like, hey, you good? And you're like, no. And he's like, oh, where are you going? And so you throw the bike in the back of the truck. Dude guy takes you home, meet new dude guy. Super friendly, learn his story, like have a connection. You're like, so good. Now you've got this positive vibe. You're going to pay it forward. Turns into like a total positive thing. Training Peaks doesn't capture that. Like there's no button that says like amazing life experience on disaster of a ride today. It just shows up as a failure. When actually it could be really cool. Or similarly, maybe you learned a new skill, right? That you did on that ride today. You've been trying to nail this corner or this turn or whatever, and you finally did it. And there was something about it that was different that you're trying to capture. So the next time you enter a turn or about to go over the crest of a hill or who knows, whatever it is, you can tap into that again, right? And you want to capture that. And it's not going to show up at, 29 minutes and 17 seconds as any type of event in your data because you're just turning. It's not even big enough to show up on a GPS file. But for you, it's really meaningful. And I think that's the part that the data misses if we don't tell the story, because learning isn't linear. There's two things happening. There's your fitness trajectory, like work I do, stress I accumulate, recovery, compensation, right? That's sort of the general process. But what we're missing is the why, right? Like what's happening there? Like what are all the other things that go on? So I have a stupid habit on Strava of, naming my workouts ridiculous things. They're usually things that come out of the conversation, during the ride while I'm Zwift chatting with people or sometimes on Discord. But it's meaningful for me. It's just kind of like a little sort of funny memory thing. That to me is like a trigger for some parts of that stuff. It's also just like it taps into that creative part of my brain, which also needs stimulation. Sometimes, I don't know, when you ride your bike for 5 hours, there's not a lot of creativity in that, like, what am I going to do next hour? Oh, I know. sit down and turn my legs in circles. Like, let's do that. Like, oh, I can't wait. I love that part of this bike ride. Woo, and so there's also that element too. So, and I'm sure you have tons of adventures. Like, think about your ride the other night. You went out, you rode. Other dude guy, so many dude guys. Who knew this planet was full of dude guys? Other dude guy crashes his bike, and the other 12 dude guys are like, we're not stopping. We got a bike ride. I'm trying to earn some TSS, man. My heart rate, I don't want my heart rate to drop. And you're like, but dude guy is stumbling around, unable to operate his bicycle. I got to get him back to the truck. That looks like a failure of a workout, right? It looks like you didn't do your thing, but you reaffirm that you're an awesome human being. Earning massive karma points for wherever that's being tracked. Heaven only knows where that is. And it was a very different thing, but important, right? But Training Peaks says, Matt, so sorry. Look at your heart rate. Not enough stress. Yeah. Unless you're like, dude guy, you're injured. He's like, no, I'm actually kind of okay. And you're like, well, I'm going to get you back to your truck. He's like, that's cool. And you're like, but I am going to fireman carry you. He's like, no, I can walk. And you're like, no, I actually need the TSS. So I'm going to throw you on my back and carry you. Like, please, I'd like to walk. You're like, you're not walking. I need this. I need a workout. That'd be a funny.
That's the type. That was type A, Matt. That was Matt a couple of years ago. That was type A, Matt.
No way you are like that.
Yeah, trying to find a little bit of balance these days.
Did you see that? Like, I could see a super funny sketch of like EMT guy who is obsessed with like getting steps and like burning calories, but he's sitting in an ambulance all day, so he's really not doing a lot. So when he's called to the scene of an emergency, he's like furiously active, trying to like burn calories and get a step goal for the day. And you're like, we're gonna take the old lady into the hospital and just take her to like the ER, and like the dude guy like brings her to the hospital and like takes her like to 6th floor, like, and he's like, what, you don't belong up here, you belong down the ER. He's like, only 2,000 more steps to go, and she's like, I don't feel so good, take me to the ER. He's like, just a second, lady. And then he's like sprinting down the hall, lady in the stretcher, like, because he's so aggro try hard about his steps. Anyway, that show will never get made, but if it did, there's like 4 people like me who would enjoy it. All right, we're taking all this time. All right, we may not get, because I want to be respectful of people's time, so we're just going to do one more topic because we'll keep it short to a half hour. Already 21 minutes, which is hard to believe. Just passed an FTP test on a bike. All right, so I have 3 things here. You get to choose one. You ready? So the first one was from Slow Twitch. What the hell is triathlon right now? I come on to Slow Twitch. This is a post by Dev Paul, who I've known for decades in the triathlon space, amazing human being. He's like, I come on Slow Twitch, and there's a review for an $18,000 bike with $4,000 wheels on it. Is triathlon really going to grow if that's what we're doing? Next one is podcast binging, the Norwegian train, just downloading information. And the last one here is Nice versus Kona on the table. Which topic do you pick? I'm in the wheel of topics.
Man, I love all those. So we're gonna save the Norwegian one for next time because I got a take on that one for you that I want to talk about. Okay. So we're gonna save that one. So since you're deferring Kona, let's talk about Nice versus Kona. So
yeah,
you go right. First. So what do you think? Nice versus Kona.
Me first. All right, so there's a lot of history here with this. So for those of you who are not paying attention to the drama around Kona, my insider version of this, not insider as in knowing Ironman or WTC, but just working with athletes in the mix. So obviously Ironman had a problem before the pandemic where the pier was only so big, was the official story, right? The pier is only so big. We can only fit so many athletes on this pier. And they were figuring out creative ways to shrinkify the transition area. They were like putting bikes super close together. Like every year in Kona, the transition has it's like wooden boxes where your rear tire fits, and the boxes were just getting closer and closer and closer together so that it could fit more people. And then they were, having bikes out on the run out and all sorts of stuff. And the big thing was we just can't have more people on the pier. That's our limiter. That was Ironman's story. It's possible that was being influenced by other factors, but there was a finite number of people who could be on the pier. Well, so, as a result, there's only so many qualification slots, et cetera. Scarcity, right? Business, model of scarcity. Well, fast forward to the pandemic, and all of a sudden, pandemic is now raging in Europe. America still, perhaps some might say in denial, some might say really not here yet, although obviously our poop told us something different, and I always listen to my poop. I don't know about you, Matt. And so in Europe, they were having trouble, and so all of a sudden, half of the global triathlon population was not allowed to come to Kona. And so looking ahead to Kona, and having not made a decision, but early enough in the year to be thinking about making a decision, Ironman was like, well, what do we do if only the people in America can come to Kona? Like, we need to fill up all the spots that we don't have for people who are coming. So Ironman went to the whiteboard. They brainstormed for, I'm pretty sure, about 3 seconds and said, let's just invite everybody who was a legacy athlete who's kind of close or was close and meets the criteria for achieving a race. Let's just invite all of them at once. Email them all and just get them in. So they email all these legacy athletes, and they're like, holy cow, I get to race in Kona this year, forgetting the part about the imminent doom of a pandemic, which some people didn't really know, and signed up for Kona. So now Ironman has all the racers who are going to race, and then we add in, like 1,000 legacy athletes on top of that mix. But Kona doesn't happen. So we go fast forward to the next year. And so this time around, we're going to do Kona. We're going to maybe move it earlier. They couldn't move it earlier. It's like, well, we're going to do it later in the year because it'll be later. We're going to work it out. But still, some people could travel. Some people couldn't travel. So faced with the same dilemma, Ironman was like, we got to fill this space up. Not giving any refund money to anybody. So holding the money. We'll invite more legacy people, invite the legacy people. Kona doesn't happen. And then in the next spring, 2021, I guess, they were like, hey, or 2022, they were like, hey, we can do our championships in St. George. St. George is the Ironman World Championships this year. So just come to St. George, to which the majority of people, legacy who just got in by a miracle, or people who qualified were like, I qualified for Kona. I didn't qualify for St. George. So St. George was the perhaps most unattended world championship race ever, despite being beautiful and challenging and having many of the qualifications of a world championship race. Nobody really attended. So they didn't get rid of any of the people. They only got rid of a few people. In fact, I was getting emails before St. George saying, hey, you've qualified for other world championships. Why don't you do this one? So I emailed them and I was like, do I get to go for free? And they were like, oh, no, you have to pay to come. I was like, well, no, hell no. I'm not going to go do an Ironman and pay for it in St. George. I'm like, no, I'm all set. So basically, Ironman headed into Kona with essentially 2.5 to 3 years worth of athletes for just one race. And the solution to that, after brainstorming for perhaps 7 seconds, was to split the race up into 2 days, to do a race on Thursday and a race on Saturday, and to effectively split the age groups on the men's side in a way, and then allocate the women to a single day and say, well, it's the new thing. We're so inclusive. We want to have so many women race. We want to give them their own day, AKA this is code for we have a financial problem. And if these people don't race, we may get sued because not delivering on what we promised. So they have the race on 2 days. And then the problem becomes that now they try and do the race on 2 days. For the athletes, I think it sounded pretty cool. We had, 15, 16 athletes out there, I think. And most people seem pretty happy about it. They got to cheer a race one day and race another day and, compare notes. And sort of do all of that. But the island suffered massively because not only was there, like prices were off the chain, like super crazy, but like also the island wasn't built to have two bulk orders of the world's fittest and most type A people simultaneously there in Kailua, Kona, and in the surrounding infrastructure. It wasn't built for that. So all the things that people associate having been in Kona, not just the beauty and the amazing people and the vibe, but also traffic, can't eat, can't find food in the restaurants, can't find food in the supermarket, gets worse when there's twice as many people there. And so that side of it was really tough. And so fast forward to this year, and Ironman still has a problem because they have more racers that still need to race, like yours truly. But they also said, we really value our women and we want them to have their own separate day. So they went back to the organizers in Hawaii and said, hey, let's do this thing. This is great, the 2-day thing. And they said, hell no, in Hawaiian, which probably sounds a lot nicer than what I just said. And they said no. In fact, you can tell that the organizers are so mad that they didn't even give Kona the same Saturday that they always give Kona. They were like, sorry, that Saturday's taken by like a cruise ship. but you can do a Saturday later in October sometime. For some reason, we just forgot to book it for you this year on like your 47th year on the island. So sorry, we missed that one. So they're wicked pissed. So now Ironman's in a crunch because they're like, we can't do a 2-day race in Kona. We can only do a 1-day race, but we have twice the number of racers. What are we going to do? Plus this promise that we made, which maybe we don't like so much anymore, although I can't say that. Although I did just say it, but who knows what they're thinking. It's been years since I've got a letter from Ironman. I wonder if I'll get one now. And so they said, I know what we'll do. We'll split the race again, but we got to put it someplace epic. So we'll put it in Nice, which is for many in the original version of triathlon, Mark Allen, Dave Scott time, was the home of long course racing. It's where the races went down. We've had Mark and Dave on the podcast here, and they talk about Nice. In fact, my favorite part of the podcast was like Dave showing Mark the trophy that he never won because like Dave had all the trophies. But the best part about it was the trophy was like, I don't know, 30 years old. It's totally falling apart. Trophies weren't made to last as long as these men are still going, both phenomenal physiological specimens and great people and awesome podcast guests. Dave's like, you don't have one of these. And Mark's like, why would I want it? It looks like a piece of shit. It's falling apart. These two, like years later, not even racing, are totally poking at each other. And so that's the long introduction in my part of the story. So Nice has a long history in terms of not just European racing, but it was on the global stage of endurance for a very long time. It's a completely different environment than what Kona is. But my personal take on it is like, I'm an athlete of the island. Like I went to Hawaii on my honeymoon because I was and still remain a enormous triathlon dork. My amazing and incredible wife is a triathlete as well. She's done 6 Ironman races. So we were like, let's go there for our honeymoon. And we thought it was the best thing ever. We loved it. And we went there and experienced it before I'd ever qualified. I think I qualified the next year. But it was a real eye opener for me to see it there. And all of my Ironman experiences, 10 of them in Kona, all in Kona. Like there's just something about it. It's just a local place, probably like you feel about Leadville, or at least Dudeguy feels about Leadville. That's for sure. Because actually, technically it is his home. I don't have that same vibe for Nice. And when I think about championships, I kind of I'm there for the vibe. Like, yes, I do an Ironman, but people do Boston because it's the Boston Marathon. They're not there because they want to run a downhill course from point to point that's hilly, goes through Kenmore Square, like smells of barbecue the whole time. Silently, I want to vomit. Murders your quads, and then when you get to the finish line, the temperature drops 25 degrees and you can't find your family because they spaced out the letters of the alphabet so far, and your last name is an M, which is literally 4 blocks away, and you can't quite get there. Your family's like, where are you? You have to stop and vomit, and they can't find you because you don't have a phone because it's dirty. Like, I'm not there for that. I'm there because it's Boston, like the vibe, the energy before the race, the people there, like, high-fiving people, like literally on Boston, like from mile 1 to mile 26, like you just go through like the whole panoply of all humans. There's like motorcycle gangs and beards, and then it's like co-eds and like they want to kiss you. And I'm like, too much, and then it's like rich people who are trying to manage their kids. They don't want it. Then you're back in Newton and it's college kids, and like, it's crazy at BC as a sea of people. Right. That's the vibe that you're there for. I'm not there to run 26.2 miles. And I think the World Championships is the same way. I don't think I'm sure the fans and everything and the experience in Nice will be world class. I think the athletes bring that energy and they'll bring the people who also have that energy, but I just don't think it'll be the same for me. I don't know. What do you think? Is there any
I didn't know. Wow, that really opened up a whole that was a whole deep dive there. I didn't know that was in there. That was amazing. I guess my answer was a little bit more simpler, I guess, is that I'm a fan of it, actually. Like, I'm a fan of it. Look at that. Good thing we're separated right now.
Oh, no.
I think it's interesting. Like I like other world championships, outside of triathlon, move their world championship around to different courses, and you get different athletes that can excel on different courses. So, there's a certain athlete that is going to do well in Kona, and then you certainly can learn to race well there. That's certainly a skill set you can learn to do.
Right.
But I think if you were trying to find, over like the lifetime of an athlete, who is the best athlete at that sport, let's see that athlete on lots of different courses, in a world championship scenario where he's against other athletes. So let's see him do a hilly course. Let's see him do a flat course. Let's see him do a windy course. Let's see him do a technical course. Like how long does Blumenfeld or Frono, how long is their career going to last? 5-8 years, maybe that's a run. So like over that time frame, we get to see them over a several different kinds of courses. Now, certainly you see them, compete in courses throughout the year, but you don't see guys go head to head, right? It's for a world championship. So I like the idea because it opens the door to see for other athletes to showcase their ability to perform on other courses, right? You don't have to be optimized for ridiculous heat and humidity, right? So, but certainly you could, if you want to do well there, you can certainly train yourself to do well there. And by bouncing back and forth, I think it allows the mystique of that race to be, just for the women or just for the men or just for, and then so it allows people to still experience that environment, but then also, allows us to see athletes on other courses. I think it opens up other opportunities for other athletes and stuff like that. And it's, it kind of works for the island to only have one race or whatever too. Yeah. So, so I'm kind of a fan for that particular reason, but I do agree with you that there is something about, certainly I think that race without the NBC broadcast would still have a great vibe, right? Like it didn't take NBC broadcast to make Boston a great race or, for me, like that, I enjoy the Leadville mountain bike series. Like that is a great race for a vibe. And there's, but I think that you could probably create a mystique around other courses based on, some of the media that gets generated from those, like you said, even with the Nice, you could do the tie-in back to, Dave Scott, Mark Allen doing the Nice thing too. So there is some history there. So if you're going to pick a course, that was probably a good one to pick rather than, Arizona or, something like that, the world championship in Arizona or something like that,
totally. And point, I think it's also, while people have sort of lamented, you lose, for some, Kona is a group or a family journey or a teammate journey, right? If you if we have women on the team who are racing, I'm never going to race with them because they'll be on the other side of the planet. When I'm on the other side of the planet, that's a bummer. But it does give like opportunity for those athletes, to kind of have their own story. And like you said, on the Nice side, like the history's there. And it'll be interesting to see how the marketing machine that is Ironman, long course racing sort of celebrates that. Because back in the day, these, all of these athletes, men and women, raced a variety of races year round. It was actually a lot more racing than we do now. Points, they didn't have this point system where they had to really compete and earn points. And, in some cases, particularly on the women's side, do a lot of Ironman races to qualify. They could qualify with a race, which allowed them to do short course racing, or they could do Nice, which is like long distance, but not Ironman. And they could experiment and travel. The Bud Light series was all around. So it's a mixture of races. It was just a very dynamic and energetic scene, and you had some elites that were traveling, but there was energy around it, but obviously it wasn't the visual media that we experience now, online, but the print media was rich, and you can still find some of those old school magazines, and it was just a different vibe, so I do agree that getting the sport in a way out of the rut is important. I guess part of me just feels like on some level it kind of gets like too little too late, for me, where I think there was an opportunity when long course triathlon was big, that Ironman could have made other choices around growing the sport. And I don't think, we look at the $18,000 bike with the $4,000 wheels. I looked at some of those bikes this year from Kona, and I was like, I just literally, I think the tweet I put out was like, bicycle or fighter jet? Like, tell me what this object is from, right? Does it belong on a triathlon bike in Kona, or does it belong, as a nose cone radar sensor on a $35 million jet? Because it's hard to tell. And honestly, I think it costs about the same. It's probably made by the same people. But the specialization of the elite level of sport has just, in a way, just made it super inaccessible. Much like, if I race and my wife races and we both are amazing athletes, which we have some of those couples on the team, who can afford to go to Nice and to go to Kona in the same, you know what I mean? Like while it's accessible for some in that way. So the folks in Europe who have long deserved a high quality race, closer to home, that doesn't necessarily, for them to make this whole journey to Kona, is a pain. Now they can go to Nice, but the people who are far away now have to go somewhere else. I'm not saying it's supposed to be equal or fair, but it brings a different dynamic.
You mentioned the dynamic thing about, like, there was also something I read about, like, the expos. I don't know what the deal with Ironman is with, brands, but like some of them were saying that, like, in order to have, a spot at the expo, you had to go to both. Right. So, and some of them are like, I'm a female only brand. Like, I don't need to go to Nice or whatever. So, so there is some, uniqueness about that. They'll have to change, the sport will have to adapt to some of those things. And that does make it tougher for some of the brands to, like, go to two places, especially if you're a smaller or a niche or something like that you don't have the travel budget to go to two, camp out for a week in two different places, in two exotic locations. But hopefully it would sort itself out.
We could, there's a brand out there. If you want to fly me to one of those two locations, I will represent you. I'll put your logo on my shirt. I'll be whatever you want me to be. I can be like happy, suddenly, vegan person, or I can be like super angry, like wheel salesperson, or I can't fix anything. Matt, you'd have to be there too if something needs fixing. But I could talk the heck out of anything. So if you need to, like, send someone somewhere and your team is disgruntled and doesn't want to get on another plane to go to a different part of the planet to sell something,
you can take care of that for them. You'll be a stunt double. You'll be a stunt double for any triathlon brand.
Totally, yeah. They can get on the podcast. We can do something like that. Just kind of hook them up and then also talk about something. I mean, who knows? Like, there are a lot of wacky brands out there. Like, that's another one for a future episode, like wackiest sponsor products you've seen. We could talk about that at the races because there's been quite a few, particularly at Kona, because it's like an international stage and things are super weird. But regardless, okay, so we're split on that one. We're agreed on the first one, but split on the second topic. So, folks, we will be back. We're going to do this on the regular. We'll talk about 3 topics. And if you want to, hit us up on social media, on Facebook, or you can find us on Twitter at TeamEN. Go ahead, drop some ideas for topics in here. We will wrestle through them. Ideally, we'll get to a place where we can talk about more than 2. Maybe next week I will not have as much caffeine, and it'll be a little more opportunity for Matt to speak. So sorry, Matt. You're going to you might need to break out the cold brew for the next podcast. I don't know. That
would be a really fast podcast. We would be really amped up, and we both would talk really fast.
People would want to
cover a lot of content. I'm not sure people would understand it though.
How you can turn. I turn all the. I don't know about you, but I turn all the podcasts up. It's like, I got an audio book. I'm like, awesome. And because I'm a Type A athlete, I'm like, what would make this podcast awesome? If I could listen to it in 7 minutes, go. And it's like. Everybody, welcome back to this podcast. So fast. So I do that.
Thank you for joining us.
Totally. But if we did that with our podcast, I don't think there's a slow it down button. Like, I don't know. We would be like the chipmunks by the time we got to the end of that podcast. But maybe, hey, if it gets more downloads and we spread the message, maybe it's good. All right. So topics left on the table for next time. But everyone, thanks for joining. Again, you can find Endurance Station online, endurancestation.us, world's largest online community of endurance athletes. Come check us out. We help you train for whatever your race may be. And gosh darn it, we make sure you have a lot of fun along the way. We do also help people get faster, in addition to talk a lot, or at least me. All right, kids, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.
For more information about Endurance Nation, visit us online at endurancenation.us. The provided music is from the Podshow Podsafe Music Network. Check it out at music.podshow.com.